Your child looks at the plate, not dramatically, not angrily, just long enough to send a signal. I don't like this. And instantly, something tightens inside you. You feel the familiar mix of pressure and fatigue. It's been a long day. You just want them to eat something. So you negotiate. Just a few bites. Try the chicken. If you eat this, you can have dessert. And when that fails, you do what most loving parents do. You make something else. Mac and cheese, toast. Anything they'll accept. And as you stand there cooking a second meal, a quiet thought passes through your mind. How did dinner turn into this? This moment feels ordinary, but it isn't. Because this is the moment picky eating is trained. Not intentionally, not cruelly, systematically. And once you understand what is actually happening in your child's brain during these moments, food battles stop feeling mysterious. They become predictable. And predictable systems can be changed. Stay with me. Because this is not about being stricter. It's about understanding leverage. Let's start with something uncomfortable. Most picky eating is not about taste. It's about structure. Children are not refusing food because they are spoiled or difficult. They're responding to incentives. And right now, the system is rewarding refusal. Every time a child says, "I don't like this," and a new option appears, their brain learns something powerful. Refusal works. Not logically, neurologically. Now pause. If that triggers defensiveness, that's normal, because everything you're doing comes from care, from love, from the desire to nourish. But systems don't respond to intentions. They respond to patterns. And the pattern most American families live inside looks like this. The child controls whether they eat. The child influences what appears next. The parent manages anxiety. That is not a feeding relationship. It is a negotiation. And negotiations always escalate. Now let's zoom out. In France, parents approach meals differently, not because they love their children less, but because they trust biology more. They follow one simple rule. One family, one meal. No backup options. No short-order cooking. No negotiations. At first glance, this sounds harsh to American ears, but it isn't. Because the rule rests on two invisible pillars that change everything. And before we talk about the rule itself, you need to understand why children refuse food in the first place. Because once you understand the biology, the behavior makes sense. The first force is neophobia, fear of new foods. It's not a personality trait. It's an evolutionary survival mechanism. Your child's brain is wired to be suspicious of unfamiliar substances. In the wild, that kept humans alive. In a modern kitchen, it looks like picky eating. This fear peaks between ages 2 and 6, right when parents panic the most. So when your child refuses broccoli, they are not being stubborn. They are being developmentally normal. Now add the second force, the control paradox. Humans resist being controlled. Adults know this instinctively. If someone hovered over your plate and told you to eat one more bite, you'd feel irritation immediately. Children feel that same loss of autonomy, but more intensely. So when parents pressure, plead, or bargain, the child's brain perceives threat. And the natural response to threat is resistance. This is why research consistently shows that pressure reduces intake, not increases it. Now add the third force, the appetite cycle. Real appetite, not boredom snacking, changes everything. When a body is genuinely hungry, resistance softens. Curiosity increases. Even simple foods taste better. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Most American children arrive at dinner not hungry. Goldfish crackers at 4 p.m., a granola bar in the car, juice boxes during play, all well-intentioned, all appetite-destroying. So when dinner arrives, the child's body has no biological incentive to engage, and without appetite, everything becomes a power struggle. French parents understand something different. Hunger is not dangerous. Mild hunger is functional. It is the biological key that unlocks openness. So now, let's talk about the rule. In France, it's called le menu unique. One family, one meal. The parent decides what is served, when it is served, and where it is eaten. The child decides whether to eat and how much. This division of responsibility is critical. The parent controls structure. The child controls intake. No one crosses roles. Now pause again. This is where American parents get nervous. What if my child doesn't eat? Hold that thought, because the rule does not work alone. It rests on two supporting pillars. The first pillar is exposure without pressure. Children are not forced to finish food. They are not required to like it, but they are required to taste it. One polite taste, every time. Not a full bite, not a clean plate. Just exposure. You don't have to like it. You do have to taste it, so your tongue learns. This language matters. It removes performance pressure. It frames tasting as learning, not compliance. And here's the science. Children need between 8 and 15 exposures to a new food before acceptance. Most parents give up after 3. French parents don't. They see food the way educators see reading. You don't stop teaching letters because they're hard. You stay consistent. Now the second pillar. The invisible one most families miss. The hunger window. French children do not graze. They eat meals. And one structured snack, often around 4 p.m. Then nothing but water until dinner. Not because parents are cruel, but because appetite needs time to build. Without hunger, the system collapses. No hunger means no curiosity. No curiosity means no tasting. And without tasting, neophobia wins. So now, let's put this together. Dinner arrives. Your child sees something unfamiliar. They say, "I don't like this." You stay calm. You don't have to like it. You do have to taste it. No bargaining, no backup meal. They hesitate. You wait. No hovering, no counting bites. Eventually, they take a small taste. Maybe they grimace. You don't react. Instead, you ask something neutral. Is it crunchy or soft? This sensory talk is powerful. It shifts focus from approval to observation. It turns eating into curiosity. Now here's the key. After the taste, the child decides what else to eat from what is available. There is always at least one safe food on the table. bread, rice, food. This protects the child from fear, and it protects the parent from panic. Now notice what is missing. No pressure, no rewards, no threats, no emotional charge. Just structure. And structure does the work. This approach doesn't work overnight. The first few days are a testing phase. Your child may eat very little. They are checking whether the old system still exists. Do not collapse. Within a week, appetite returns. Within 2 weeks, resistance softens. Within a month, many children begin trying foods voluntarily, not because they were forced, because their bodies were ready and their autonomy was respected. This is the long game, and long games are where intelligent parents win. Once you understand the structure, the emotional temperature around food begins to change. Not because children suddenly become adventurous eaters, but because the system stops rewarding resistance. And when resistance is no longer rewarded, behavior adapts. This is the part most parents underestimate. Picky eating is not sustained by taste. It is sustained by attention, negotiation, and emotional energy. Remove those, and the system resets. Now let us talk about why this approach feels so difficult at first. Because it triggers parental anxiety. Food is primal. Eating feels like survival. When the child refuses food, the parent's brain interprets danger. This activates urgency. Urgency leads to pressure. Pressure creates resistance. Resistance escalates anxiety, and the cycle tightens. The French approach breaks the cycle by trusting biology. A healthy child will not starve themselves. They may skip a meal, they may eat lightly for a few days, but hunger is a powerful teacher, and hunger, when paired with structure, creates openness. Now let us address the most common fear directly. What if my child goes to bed hungry? They might. Once. And that single experience often does more to end food battles than months of negotiation. Not because the child is punished, but because the body remembers. Hunger sharpens appetite. Appetite softens resistance. The next day, tasting becomes easier. Now let us talk about the role of snacks again, because this is where most implementations fail. If snacks are unstructured, dinner will always be a battle. Children who graze all afternoon arrive at dinner physiologically full and emotionally tired. They have no biological incentive to engage, so refusal becomes the only available leverage. French families solve this by design. Meals are predictable, snack time is predictable, and the space between them is protected. This predictability trains appetite. The body learns when food is coming, and when it does, curiosity rises. Now let us talk about what parents should not do during this transition. Do not comment on how much the child eats. Do not praise bites. Do not show disappointment. Do not negotiate. Food should be emotionally neutral. This is harder than it sounds, because parents want reassurance. They want signs it is working. But reassurance seeking leaks anxiety, and anxiety reintroduces pressure. Now let us talk about the tasting rule more deeply. One polite taste is not about obedience. It is about exposure. The brain learns familiarity through repetition. Familiarity reduces fear. Fear is what blocks acceptance. This is why forcing children to finish food backfires. It associates food with threat. Threat triggers avoidance. The polite taste avoids this trap. It keeps the experience small, contained, manageable. Now let us talk about sensory language again. When you ask, "Is it crunchy or soft?" you redirect attention. The child is no longer deciding whether they like the food. They are observing it. Observation reduces judgment. Judgment creates resistance. This small shift is powerful. Now let us zoom out. What is really happening here is a redistribution of control. Parents stop controlling intake. Children stop controlling the menu. Each side stays in their lane. And when roles are clear, conflict dissolves. Now let us talk about consistency. This system only works if it is stable. If parents collapse on day 3, the child learns that refusal still works. Testing intensifies. Parents give up. And the cycle deepens. The first week is the hardest, because it is a negotiation phase. The child is checking whether the old system still exists. Once they realize it does not, behavior adjusts. Now let us talk about long-term outcomes. Children raised with structured, pressure-free eating develop healthier relationships with food. They eat a wider variety. They regulate intake better. They are less likely to overeat or undereat. This is not about culture. It is about structure. Now let us connect food to a broader parenting philosophy. Meals are one of the first arenas where children experience boundaries, autonomy, and trust. How you handle food teaches lessons far beyond nutrition. It teaches whether adults can be trusted to stay calm, whether autonomy is respected, whether pressure is used to control behavior. These lessons generalize. Now let us connect this to the investor mindset this audience understands. Short-term volatility is uncomfortable. Long-term stability requires tolerating that discomfort. The French approach tolerates short-term uncertainty to build long-term health. American approaches often sacrifice long-term outcomes for short-term relief. This is not a moral failure, it is a systems failure. Now let us talk about the dinner table environment. French meals are slower. Screens are absent. Adults eat the same food. This modeling matters. Children learn by watching. If adults eat calmly and without commentary, children feel less pressure. Now let us address a final misconception. This approach is not about forcing children to eat adult food. It is about inviting them into a shared food culture. Inclusion reduces resistance. Isolation increases it. Now let us prepare for the next step. Because once food battles end, something else becomes visible. A calmer child, a calmer parent, and a deeper trust. And that trust is the real asset. Once food stops being a battleground, something unexpected happens. Behavior outside the kitchen begins to change. Not immediately, not dramatically, but steadily. Because the dinner table is not just about eating. It is one of the first systems where children experience authority, autonomy, and trust at the same time. And systems always transfer. When structure works in one domain, the brain expects it in others. This is why the French dinner rule has effects far beyond food. Now let us talk about self-regulation. Self-regulation is the ability to tolerate discomfort without acting impulsively. Hunger is one of the earliest forms of discomfort children experience regularly. When hunger is respected, not feared, children learn something powerful. Discomfort is temporary. It can be tolerated. It does not require panic. This lesson carries forward. Children who learn to sit with mild hunger are often better at sitting with frustration, waiting their turn, finishing tasks, managing emotions. Now contrast this with a child whose discomfort is always immediately relieved. Hunger is solved instantly. Boredom is solved with snacks or screens. Frustration is solved with negotiation. This child learns a different rule. Discomfort must be eliminated immediately. This rule makes self-discipline almost impossible later. Now let us connect this to discipline more broadly. Discipline does not mean punishment. It means structure. And structure works when it is predictable and emotionally neutral. The French dinner rule is exactly that. Predictable meals, predictable expectations, no emotional escalation. Children adapt quickly to predictable systems. They resist unpredictable ones. Now let us talk about authority. Authority that argues loses credibility. Authority that stays calm gains it. At the dinner table, parents who stop negotiating send a clear signal. I am calm. I am consistent. I am not afraid of your emotions. This is not dominance. It is confidence. Children feel this confidence and they relax inside it. Now let us talk about autonomy again. In the French model, children are not forced to eat. They are allowed to listen to their bodies. They choose how much to eat. This autonomy matters. When children feel autonomy in one area, they are less likely to fight for it elsewhere. Power struggles decrease. Now let us talk about trust. Trust is built when parents do not overreact. When a child says, I don't like this, and the parent stays calm, trust grows. The child learns that emotions are safe. That disagreement does not threaten connection. This is emotional security. And emotional security is the foundation of cooperation. Now let us zoom forward again. Children raised in this environment often become less rigid eaters as they age. They try foods out of curiosity, not pressure. They listen to hunger and fullness cues. They do not associate food with conflict. This protects them long-term, not just from picky eating, from disordered eating patterns. Now let us talk about modeling. French parents eat the same food as their children. They do not prepare special meals. This sends a subtle but powerful message. This food is normal. Normalization reduces fear. Fear blocks appetite. Now let us talk about conversation at the table. Food is discussed neutrally. Taste, texture, temperature. Not moralized. No good food or bad food. No praise for eating. No shame for refusing. This neutrality keeps the nervous system calm. Now let us connect this to a broader parenting mindset. Parents often believe they must convince children to behave. But behavior rarely changes through persuasion. It changes through environment. Change the environment, and behavior follows. The French dinner rule is environmental engineering. It removes incentives for refusal. It removes rewards for power struggles. It restores clarity. Now let us talk about the long-term return on this approach. Parents report fewer battles, less stress, more enjoyable meals. Children develop broader tastes over time, not overnight, but reliably. This is compounding. Now let us connect this to the financial mindset this audience understands. Short-term discomfort, long-term gain. Tolerance for uncertainty, trust in systems. The same principles apply. Now let us talk about mistakes. Parents will slip. They will negotiate. They will offer backups. This does not break the system. What matters is the pattern. Return to structure. Children adapt again. Now let us talk about cultural resistance. Many American parents worry about being judged, about seeming strict, about depriving their child. But children raised with this structure are not deprived. They are empowered. They are included. They are trusted. Now let us prepare to close this. Because the final insight is not about food. It is about how children learn to relate to limits. And once that clicks, everything else becomes easier. At a certain point, the question stops being about food. It becomes about limits, about trust, about whether children experience structure as safety or as pressure. Because the dinner table is one of the first places where children learn how power works. Not through lectures, through repetition, through tone. Through what changes and what does not. The French dinner rule works because it answers 3 questions clearly and consistently. Who decides what is served? Who decides how much to eat? What happens when there is resistance? Clarity removes conflict. Ambiguity feeds it. Now, let us step back and look at what truly changes when parents stop negotiating meals. Parents stop performing anxiety. Children stop performing refusal. The emotional charge drains out of the interaction. And when emotion drains, learning begins. This is the pattern underneath every successful system. Remove emotional volatility. Increase predictability. Trust biology. Now let us talk about trust one last time. Parents often think trust means letting children lead. It does not. Trust means believing that a child's body can regulate itself when the environment is stable. Hunger regulates appetite. Repeated exposure regulates taste. Calm structure regulates behavior. You are not forcing outcomes. You are creating conditions. Now let us address a final fear honestly. What if my child never learns to like vegetables? Liking is not the goal. Acceptance is. Liking often comes later, sometimes much later. Children do not need to love broccoli at age 4 to become healthy adults. They need to learn that unfamiliar foods are safe, that meals are predictable, that pressure is absent, that their autonomy is respected. When those conditions exist, acceptance follows. Now let us connect this to the long-term relationship with food. Children raised without food battles are less likely to sneak food, less likely to obsess, less likely to rebel. Food becomes normal, and normal food behavior is the most valuable outcome of all. Now let us talk about the parent again, because this approach changes you too. You stop monitoring every bite. You stop negotiating. You stop feeling personally rejected when food is refused. Your nervous system relaxes. And relaxed parents create relaxed environments. This is not accidental. It is contagious. Now let us talk about consistency. This approach only works when it is boring. Same structure, same expectations, same calm response. Boring systems win. Dramatic systems burn out. Now pause for a moment. If this video has changed how you think about picky eating, pressure, or control at the dinner table, subscribe to this channel. Not for algorithms, but because these conversations are rare and they matter. And if there is one person in your life, a partner, a friend, a sibling, someone who genuinely wants a better relationship with their child, share this video with them. Not to criticize, not to correct, but to support. Because parenting is not meant to be done in isolation, and clarity is something we can give each other. Now let us bring this home. Picky eating is not a child problem. It is a system problem. And systems change when roles are clear. Parents decide what and when. Children decide whether and how much. No pressure, no negotiations, no backup meals. Just structure, trust, and time. This is not permissive parenting. It is confident parenting. It does not rush development. It protects it. You are not raising a child who eats everything. You are raising a child who trusts food, who trusts their body, who trusts limits. And that trust extends far beyond the kitchen, into discipline, into self-regulation, into how they handle frustration and boundaries in every area of life. The French dinner rule is simple, but simplicity is not weakness. It is precision. And precision is what creates lasting change. One meal, one structure, one calm decision at a time. And over time, the battles disappear. Not because anyone won, but because the system finally made sense.